That was just to make Andrew laugh, and it worked, you guys. Hey, what's going on? Phil here. Welcome to another Playground Session stream. Robert Atkins saying his internet's not working well. Sorry, Robert. It's great to see you in the building, in the screens, I guess I should say. Sarah Pickles in the house. What's going on? Peter Whitvilliet. I'm sorry. Sorry, Peter. I appreciate seeing you in the chat here, but I did not do your last name justice. Barbara, Elta John. What's going on, everyone? Thanks for joining. Today we're going to be talking more about my main man, Bach, and his piece, Prelude in C. And at this point, I believe everyone here, if you've been a part of the challenge so far, you should have all of the material from section 1 already learned. So I want to hear from you guys. How's it going so far? Do you have everything learned from section 1? Have you already submitted your performance video? Or are you still trying to get it together in the last couple of lessons? I really want to know how you guys are doing, because part of today's lesson, in fact, the entire lesson today is dedicated to checking in with you guys. Tina Linkins is writing in saying, first live chat. That's awesome. Hey, Tina. So let's use this opportunity to ask me a question, make a comment, an observation, anything about Prelude in C. And first, while you guys are coming up with your comments for that, or your questions, what I'd like to do is hit you guys with an opportunity to win a free song credit for the Playground Sessions interactive app. We're about to do a pop quiz, y'all. It's going to be a quick one. So I need the first correct answer here. The first one wins. What key is this piece in? The piece is called Prelude in C. What key is it in? First correct answer wins a free song credit. And I'm just going to noodle for a second here while you guys think about this one. It's a tricky one. All right, guys, that was a quick one. I'm going to let you know that the very first correct answer that I see is Anna Silvera. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, guys. I got to zoom in on my font here. Anna Silvera. Anna, let me know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm so excited for you that you get a free song credit. Congratulations. The correct answer is C major. And I was kidding when I said it was a difficult one, right? Kind of a trick question, because the title of this piece is Prelude in C major. Right out of the gate, we all know this, right? That's right from measure 1. Anna says correct. Good. Thankfully, I didn't butcher that one. Congrats, Anna. If you haven't won one before and you don't know how to redeem your free song credit, simply email support@playgroundsessions.com. And if you like, you can say, "Attention, Andrew." And you say, I want a free song credit in the live stream, and he will hook you up. But yeah, we're in the key of C major here. And don't forget, you guys, this piece starts out Bach's book of pieces, of pieces that outline all the major and minor keys. This book is something we talked about last week, and it is called the Well-Tempered Clavier. So it's actually a really awesome study piece, and he wrote it with that intention. But it's also a really beautiful piece to perform, and that's one thing that I want to talk about today, is the performance of this. Now that you guys have completed section 1 in your respective learning paths, sorry guys, something just popped out here. Okay, so what I want to do is follow up on the expression lessons that we talked about to wrap up our first section. We talked about taking the notes, the rhythms, all the stuff we've practiced, and really bringing it to life. And so I talked about some techniques we can use to do that. I want to check in with you guys about, has it been easy? Has it been difficult? What are the challenges? And we can address them here together. But first, I kind of want to show you guys a pretty interesting little tidbit of information that I learned when I was kind of doing my prep work for this whole experience of Bach. And I thought it was pretty cool. Bach was a really impressive composer, as we all know, but he even took things to the next level. He would write his name into his melodies. At least he did in a piece or two. And what's interesting, you might be wondering, B-A-C-H. How could he possibly spell that in a melody? And I learned that back when Bach was doing this stuff, there was a different letter system for the notes that we know today. So this is kind of cool. Bach is spelled B-A-C-H. Now, 3 of those are letters, B, A, and C, that we can find on the keyboard. H is not. But the letters that they used back then for notation were a bit different. So check this out. B, back then, this is going to be confusing, but it's actually kind of funny too. B used to mean B flat. So when people wanted to play B flat back then, they would refer to that note as B. All right, so that's already confusing, but we're going to keep moving. A was A, C was C, so that part's easy. H was actually represented, hold on, am I remembering this wrong? So H actually meant B. That's what it was. See, I'm already confusing myself, you guys. B meant B flat. If you wanted to play a B, that would be referred to as an H. So, let me summarize. Bach, spelled out in a melody back then, would have looked like this. B flat used to be spelled with B, A, C, and B used to be spelled with H. So that little 4-note theme right there spells Bach. And he, in fact, included that riff in several of his, and at least one that I'm aware of, but I'm sure he snuck it in more. It was a fugue. The B minor, fugue in B minor, if anyone's interested, check that out. But I had some fun with that too earlier. Like, it's actually a kind of a strange melody on its own because of some of the chromatic distances between the notes, but you can harmonize them in a way that kind of works well around the circle as well, and it all sounds kind of nice and major. It almost sounds like a 90s like pop rock song, like. So that's a kind of a cool little piece of trivia I thought you guys would be interested in. He was a trickster, man. He snuck his own name into his melodies. I love that. So let me check back in here in the chat, and let's see if you guys have any questions or comments about what's going on. I see Robert Atkins has a question here. Robert's asking, are there symbols on sheet music that designate expressions? Let's say specifically for pedals. Are there symbols that designate when to press the pedal and when to release it? Thank you, Robert. This is a really great question that's going to get me, it's going to segue me perfectly into some of this more expression lesson for today. So this is great. So first of all, I think it's important that we differentiate a little bit between some of the things we're talking about here. One is expression, and I've seen some people already writing in the chat about expression, a part of expression at least being the push and pull of tempo. Okay, that's one thing that can fall into that category. We call that rubato. And that's one element to playing expressively. Now the pedal is another element altogether, and in fact it may not be 100% accurate to put pedal technique into this camp of expression. The use of the pedal, of course can be used expressively, but really we're talking about more of a fundamental technique about the pedal needs to be down now and it needs to be up now. Most of the time you don't see that kind of rule, that hard, fast rule when it comes to more expressive type things. But the pedal, to answer your question, Robert, there definitely is a notation symbol or a tool that tells the performer when the pedal should come down and when it should come up. I don't have an example to pull up on screen at the moment, but I can tell you that what you'll see typically is a straight horizontal line underneath the notation. And you'll also see a little triangle, kind of like a divot, up like a speed bump in that line. The speed bump indicates that the pedal should come up and then back down. And when there's a straight horizontal line, that means continue holding the pedal. So often to start it, you might see PED for pedal and then the line. You might also see an asterisk with the word with PED next to it, but typically what I see most often is that line with the up-down little speed bump in the road, if you want. And what that tells you is, okay, pedal's down, and that means my line is just horizontal underneath all of this. Now when I switch, you're going to see that line go up and then back down to collect the next bit. And then that line will be running underneath horizontally until you're supposed to pick it back up again. So that is a bit of what you might see in terms of pedaling in the notation. Now, as it relates to more of the expressive conceptual stuff, or the stuff that's more sort of open to the performer's interpretation, sometimes you will see descriptive words on a score. And you might see some suggestions next to some of the tempo markings. So for example, you might see something like andante or cantabile. That refers to a range of tempo, but there's also some wiggle room in there for you to push it or pull it a little more. Okay, but that's specifically a dynamic word, a word to dictate dynamics. But next to that dynamic word, you might also see stuff, I'm blanking on the actual word, but like it'll mean like sweetly, or, you know, heavy, like words like that you'll see written sometimes in scores. And that is totally meant to be more of a mood or a feeling that the performer is feeling while playing it, so that it comes out in the music. And that, of course, is open to interpretation as well. What does heavy mean? Well, heavy could mean loud. What is it? Pesante. Thank you, Andrew. Yep. It could also mean a heavy touch, but not necessarily fortissimo, right? So it could be open to interpretation, hence it's in that category of expression. Great question, Robert. Thank you. And in fact, some of this stuff is often omitted by the composer, him or herself. I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of those extra markings that you see, including dynamics, in fact, pedaling, crescendos, diminuendos, tempos even, a lot of that stuff was added after the fact by some of these composers' publishers. Remember, they were trying to get these books out there and help people learn and replicate these performances that these guys were composing. So they were adding things to help, almost to help them learn and help them figure out what to do. But the composers often were not the ones who actually made those decisions. It's interesting. Let me check back in here in the chat. I see something from Elta John. Hey, Elta. Elta asks, so we're talking about expression. Are there songs that would be preferred to do without a pedal? For example, I'm learning Green Onions. Yes, excellent question, Elta. In fact, Prelude in C arguably is one of the most beautiful pieces to use the pedal with, and it's also interesting here because the pedal, I learned this recently, I don't believe the pedal was around in Bach's time the way that we know it now, at least. The sustain pedal, like we hold it down and every note just rings out, I don't think that was around back then, you guys. So I think that's one of the reasons Bach was notating that we hold the left hand out to kind of keep that harmony ringing. But it's interesting. This piece is beautiful with the pedal, despite it not really being there as we know it when Bach composed it. But of course, Elta, there are other pieces that don't sound as good with the pedal, and there are some that would sound completely wrong with the pedal. I don't want to say there's a hard, fast rule for that, but I will say this. A slow and sweet song where the harmony is not changing very often, or at least not changing quickly, typically you're going to be able to find that the pedal sounds pretty good. Now, there's going to be some exceptions to that, of course. Now, the faster you go with a piece of music, the more energy it has, the more staccato playing is required of the performer. There are all sorts of things like that we can talk about where the pedal would take away from it. So I'm going to make up a song here. Let's say that this is something that is on notation in front of me. It's all 16th notes and they're all staccato, okay? Let's say that this was a piece of music that you were learning. All right, there was that. Now I'm going to play that with the pedal. You tell me if it sounds right. Just going to let that sink in for a second. That's horrible. So that's an extreme example, of course, alto, but you can see there that the pedal really took away from what we were trying to do. Now, Green Onions is a great example. Let's see, Green Onions, what key is that in? I think it might be G. Yeah, so Green Onions, I forget the melody, but that's kind of the vibe of it. It's like a swingy, shuffle swing, kind of a bluesy feel. And what I would say, Alta, is that when it comes to this kind of genre of music, Green Onions, for example, the groove and the rhythm is really important. It doesn't have to be staccato, but you definitely don't want it blending together too much. Now, the other thing you want to factor in is the melody itself. If we had a song that was slow and only had one harmony, C major the whole time, would you just pedal the entire song? It depends on what the melody is. If the melody was this, I guess you could, right? I had it down the whole time just then. But if the melody is something like this instead, say that it sounds bad because, again, the harmony in the left hand is not changing. So we can keep that sound held down in our pedal. But when the melody becomes busier and when the melody is supposed to be single note, for example, if you were a trumpet player or a trombone player like Andrew, you couldn't play that melody and more than one note at a time, right? So that's how you should be thinking about this too. You can't blend all those notes together. It's not the intention of the composer typically, unless you see that pedal marking through underneath everything. But if you don't see that, Alta, then yeah, I would say you don't want to overuse the pedal. I hope that answers that. By the way, I think I mentioned, maybe I mentioned this, you might also see an asterisk for a pedal marking. And the asterisk typically means push it down, and I think you might see another asterisk to come up. Instead of having a line all the way across. Yeah, you may see that as well. All right, let's keep moving here. I see a question from Eileen Meitzner. Hi, Eileen. Eileen asks, how do I do section 1? I just signed up a couple days ago. Awesome, okay, great question. And thank you, by the way. I'm glad to see some people here in the chat are not coming over from our app or our Facebook channel. I'm really glad to see new faces and new names in here. So, Eileen, the first thing I would say to you is it depends on what your level is. If you are a beginner, or if you've already got some experience as an intermediate player, or if you're an advanced player. There's going to be a learning path for everyone. But really what you need to do is you're going to want to download the app. Sounds like you've done that a couple of days ago, so congratulations. What you're going to want to do next is go to the Courses tab in the app. You'll see it across the top, My Playground, My Progress, Courses, Song Store, all that stuff. And within the courses, you'll see a Prelude in C course. Everyone who is a member, keep me honest here, Andrew, everyone who's a new member automatically has access to the Prelude in C course.
It's true.
Okay, great. So what you'll need to do is just go to your Courses tab, Eileen, and navigate to the Prelude in C course. And then when you find that, you're going to see a handful of lessons that'll show up as like square tiles that you can click on. And you're going to see some for Rookie, Rookie Lesson 1, Rookie Lesson 2, Rookie Lesson 3. And then you're going to see some a little bit lower for Intermediate, Intermediate Level 1, Intermediate Lesson 1, Intermediate Lesson 2, and so on. So I would have you start there. And of course, there's another aspect to this Prelude in C course challenge, which I'll talk a bit about right now, actually, and that is that we're going to encourage everyone to submit performance videos of themselves playing the section that they've learned. Now, we've already seen a lot of Facebook videos as people have been going through the days, which has been awesome to see. Day 1, video. Day 2, video. But what we're really looking for here, officially, is 30 or more performance videos from you guys that are the complete section 1, okay? I loved seeing the progress videos, but we need to make sure you guys have this whole section 1 down before we load up with more lessons and give you section 2. That's how we're going to try this challenge this time around. So we need 30, at least 30 videos of the full section 1. And for rookie players, of course, that means your section 1. And as we know, that's the first phrase of the music. For the intermediate and advanced path, we had a few phrases, so a little bit of a longer section 1. So those players, those learners, are going to be asked to submit their section 1. If we're going to add both of them up together, we don't need 30 rookies and 30 intermediates. We just need 30 total. So we need you guys to submit those as soon as you're feeling comfortable and feeling ready. We've gotten some already, which has been really cool to see. But we got to hit that 30 mark, that magic number. Now, once we hit that magic number, we are going to get section 2 out to you guys next. And we're going to try and go through this in this way, through this whole piece. So at this point, I just want to keep reminding you guys, get those performance videos in. We're going to be ready to give you section 2 for your respective learning path as early as next week. But we got to see those numbers. We got to hit that number with our performance videos. And I know we can do it. And that's one of the reasons, again, that I'm here today, is to help you guys get over that hump. And so I'm going to go back into the chat now. And let's see what else is going on. Charles Smith, the middle pedal was invented in 1845. I cannot confirm nor deny that, Charles, but I love your enthusiasm of helping everybody learn here. I love the trivia, and I love talking about the context around the time that this piece was written. It helps make it feel like more real life, right? It's like this was a real guy living in a real time. He had, kids and students, and he was writing stuff for them. I love it. Andrew actually just reminded me, Bach actually played a harpsichord. And a harpsichord actually had zero dynamic ability. You play it, and it plucked the string at the same volume. It wasn't until later that the pianoforte was invented. That's the piano, essentially, that we know today. We've just shortened it from pianoforte, which literally means soft loud, which now we know that means, hey, you can play this soft or loud, unlike the harpsichord, right? But we've just shortened it to piano, so that's what we know today. And in fact, the well-tempered clavier was also sort of a reference to the evolution of the keyboard instrument at that time. More on that to come if you guys are interested. I got to do my homework on that too. But yeah, I love that stuff. So Sarah Pickle says, silly question, but how would you smooth your playing? As I noticed that my right hand is slightly struggling with switching between each pattern group. Sounds a bit glitchy. Okay, Sarah, great question. Thanks for writing in. So I guess let's talk about this in general first. So how do we play smoothly? I'm going to exaggerate here for a second, but this is typically sort of the opposite ways to articulate your notes. You can play extremely short and detached, which is known as a staccato style playing, and that would look like this. Now, if I were to flip that and do the opposite of that, it would be to connect every note so that there is zero silence in between. And in fact, if we were going to get very technical and zoom in at a micro level, I believe that the proper way to play a legato string of notes would actually be to have a very slight overlap with the notes. In other words, you push down the next note, then you lift up your old note. It's got to be quick, but technically that's the way to do it so that everything is smooth and glued. So we all know that the left hand is actually supposed to hold down the whole time here, right? But for now, what I want to do is forget about that because I want to illustrate my point here about staccato versus legato. So I'm going to show you now legato, the first 5 notes. This is how we would do it, Sarah. And if we were to slow that down into slow motion, we would literally see this note going down, then the old one coming up, right? So that's sort of a general feeling about how to play more smoothly. You want to think legato, you want to think connected, overlap those notes even a little bit, okay? Now, having said that, let's get into your question a little more specifically. So you're saying your right hand is slightly struggling with switching between each pattern group. So I'm going to assume that you're talking about each measure and each new chord shape. So I'm going to play through the first 4 measures. In fact, let's get that on screen so that you guys can follow along with that notation. And I'm going to play that now. I'm just going to play through it once as I would play it, and then I'm going to break it down and talk about how to get the right hand feeling smoother, okay? So, as you may have noticed, I held my left hand notes down like I'm supposed to in the true notation. I also used my sustain pedal just as I taught you guys in our expression lesson, which is to say that I'm holding it down for each measure and then I'm picking it up as it changes. Up and back down. Okay, so I did that throughout that. And I did a little bit of push and pull with the tempo. I tried to push it a bit more with the middle chords, right? This one here and this one here. And then I kind of pulled it back when I got back to my consonant chord. So that's just sort of a bit of a review of kind of what we talked about in the expression lesson. But Sarah, what I'm gonna say here for ways to improve the right hand, I think it's gonna come down to the specific transition between the chord that you play or the shape that you're playing right before you have your glitch or however you're describing your issue, and then the chord that you're supposed to be playing after the glitch. That glitch, I'm going to assume, is the result of your right hand still needing a little extra practice and familiarity with the transition between the shapes. So it's one thing, of course, to talk about, here are the notes, here are the shapes, here are the rhythms, excuse me, for each new measure, right? But then an additional challenge, maybe a more difficult challenge, is then to say, all right, now let's put all those measures together, ready, go, right? Because then you have to change each shape and keep an even timing and even rhythms and all that. So what I would suggest to you, Sarah, is first do some analysis of your own playing and your own sort of working your way through the piece. You need to be able to determine where is the hardest part for your right hand. And then what I would suggest that you do is strip away all of the other challenges and just work on the right hand back and forth between those two shapes that you're having a glitch in between. And of course, that can be easier said than done, you know, but we try to build in those little transition practices into these daily breakdowns. But sometimes, in fact, maybe many times, you might find value in going back to some of those earlier lessons for review. There's no shame in that. In fact, we even build in some reviews into each of these new days. That's how important reviewing is. So please, if you're feeling like, hey, I've already learned up through measure 4, but my right hand is still struggling between measure 1 and 2, well, for example, then what I would encourage you to do is go back to that right hand lesson where we talked about measure 1 and 2. I hope that makes sense. And I don't want you to feel bad or like you've forgotten what you've learned or you're losing your skills. By no means is that the case. Everyone, even professionals, need to review the stuff that they've learned. So I highly encourage you, Sarah, to identify where the problem spot is and go back and revisit that lesson. All right, excuse my reach here. I gotta reach my laptop so I can get the comments back up. Cool. All right. Elta John has another one, but first, actually, I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. I see, is Andrew responding to Jay Ladrew? He is. Okay. Jay, I hope Andrew can make you feel better about some of this stuff. But we're going to keep it on Prelude and C. Thanks for hanging. All right, cool. I'm just catching up. You guys are writing a lot today. It makes me happy. Okay, Mike Anderson. That's my dad, by the way. Mike says, classical guitar players find Bach music to be very appropriate for guitar with no sustain pedal. That's a great point. Plus, I thought Bach played the harpsichord. You got me. You're right. Yeah. So Andrew already corrected me on that one. Thanks, Pops. So let's see. Sandra Neal. Oh, good night, Sandra. Thanks for joining from the UK. I appreciate you. All right. All right. So Elta John asks, what notes would I accent in Prelude in C? Would it be beats 1 and 3? Should the right hand be soft? These are awesome questions. And they relate perfectly to how to bring this music to life, how to make it sound as beautiful as we can. That's the whole goal here, right? It's not just about learning the notes and getting the technique. It's about bringing the music to life and feeling, satisfied with what you're playing and what's coming out of your instrument. So this is all about that. So what are we accenting? Should one hand be louder than the rest? You know what? This is kind of getting down to an area where there's more than one right answer. But I will tell you this. The right hand should not be drastically softer than the left hand. I'll tell you what that would sound like here, and you let me know if you like this. Pretty aggressive, right? So that, of course, is an exaggeration, but that's just to show you that the hands for this particular piece should probably be treated with a similar dynamic, and that is to say that this really kind of is a two-hand melody in a way, right? You could argue that that's kind of one gesture, one phrase. Now, sometimes you'll see a piece of music where it's very clear that the left hand is playing chords, the right hand is supposed to be playing the melody louder than the left hand. I'll make something up here. My right hand is more than twice as loud as the left hand for that. If I would have reversed that, you got chunky left hand chords and you kind of lose the melody, right? So I like to show you guys sometimes what not to do as a way to show you what to do. But that's just an extreme version. Now, in terms of what I would accent or what I would do differently with the volume, I wouldn't necessarily do beats 1 and 3, but I can show you what that might sound like. And I'm not saying that would be wrong, but that would kind of sound like this. Okay, and I wouldn't say it's wrong, but I would say that I don't like it as personally as much as a different approach. And here's the approach I might take. I want to look at the gesture of this melodic line. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's sort of like a sweeping gesture from low to high, right? You can imagine any number of visual to accompany that, a gust of wind, whatever, right? But something that is sort of naturally wanting to happen in my ears is that as we go up in pitch, we want to get a little bit louder maybe. And that's just a general rule. As we zoom out at a more macro level and we're looking at 4 or 8 measure phrases, I might change my tune on that. I might want to go for a longer arc. But in general, this is a nice way to get started on your end, thinking about how to develop a dynamic arc. You could sort of follow the gesture of the notes. That would look more like this. Okay, I'll show you again. Quieter in the beginning and louder as we go. What ends up happening there, if I do it right, is the top note should be technically maybe the loudest, but it's a subtle shift. We don't want this. Right? We want to gradually get louder, and we don't need to go from pianissimo to fortissimo. In fact, that would not be good. But we want to think about this as one gesture, a two-hand part, but it's a singular part, okay? And I'll play through those same 4 measures again now with an example of kind of following the gesture with my dynamics, just to kind of round that out for you guys. My first left-hand note is my quietest note, and my top right-hand note is my loudest. But I'm not covering a huge range there. I'm keeping it kind of subtle. We don't want our expression to always be forte, piano, forte, piano. We need to be able to be more nuanced than that, okay? All right, so great questions, everyone. I really hope that this is helping you guys get over the finish line with your respective section 1s. And remember, I want to remind you guys, we got to hit that magic number of 30 performance videos of your entire first section. And once we do in the Facebook group, then we're going to serve up the next section, section 2. And I just want to remind you guys, maybe I didn't mention this earlier, when you're submitting your video, it's got to be in the Playground Sessions community on Facebook, okay? So if you're not a member yet, it's a private group, but request access, and if you are a subscriber in the app, you will be admitted. And then in the Facebook group is where we have the majority of our community discussions. It's really cool. I love actually seeing all the activity that you guys bring to that group. But we're going to want to post your performance video to the Facebook community, and you're going to want to use the hashtag Bach Challenge, hashtag BACHCHALLENGE. That's going to be how you count your submission, and we're going to go through that hashtag and count the submissions, all right? So we need you guys' help. If you're on the fence about whether you should do it, you should absolutely do it. The community is also very supportive. No one's judging each other's playing, no one's saying negative comments. It's a really lovely community, and so we encourage you to share your progress. All right, so we've talked a good amount about stuff today. I've got another pop quiz for you guys. And then I think I'm going to take one more question and get out of here for the evening. This has been great, but you know, after all, you guys have for everyone who hasn't submitted a performance video yet, you got some practicing to do, right? You got some more polishing, so we're going to let you get back to that. But pop quiz question number 2 for the evening. Let's see if you guys were paying attention earlier. What did the letter used to be for this note right here? What, in Bach's time, what was this letter? Now, I'll give you guys a hint. The note on the keyboard today would be referred to as a B. But back in Bach's day, they used a different letter to talk about this note. And I'll give you one more hint. By the way, I'm looking for the first correct answer here. I'm going to give you guys one more hint, and that is that this was part of how Bach put his name into the melodies, all right? Now, Bach is spelled B-A-C-H, but what is this letter right here? What was used to refer to this one? And I'm seeing some good letters, some good answers coming through. The correct answer, everyone, is H. Great work, everyone, and that means Joseph Graber is our winner. Joseph, congrats. Just email support@playgroundsessions.com. Attention, Andrew, I won a free song credit from the YouTube live lesson. Now, Elta John, great guess. That's where the confusion was for this, right? Because B flat, this letter right here, the letter for that used to be B, right? How confusing is that? Come on. Come on, Bach. Actually, it wasn't Bach's fault. But man, isn't that a funny thing? B used to be used to refer to B flat. H used to be used to refer to B. So once again, I'll remind you guys, this is something you could use to impress your friends, maybe, depending on your friends. You could say, this is how you spell Bach on the piano. B flat, A, C, and then B. Okay, so I'm going to go to one more question here in the chat, or one more comment. Elta has a follow-up question about accenting beats 1 and 3. So Elta says, in most music, aren't the accents usually on beats 1 and 3? Or am I thinking wrong? I thought I learned that. I know it's our own expression. So Elta, yeah, this is not so much about right and wrong when we're talking about expression. You're right there. And I would also say that it depends on the genre of music. In fact, if you were in a jazz club and you were sitting in at a jam session with Harry Connick Jr., and you were, clapping or snapping on beats 1 and 3, in that setting, that would not be right. In fact, 2 and 4 is what we want to accent in jazz. Now, I know I'm being general here, but that's typically what we think about. And so that all I'm trying to show you is that there isn't just one right or wrong answer here. Now, in classical music, 1 and 3 might definitely be more important to accent than 1 and 3 might be in jazz music. But that's kind of apples to oranges here. what I would say is don't get too caught up about what are the rules of expression. And instead, I want you to be thinking about what are the tools of expression. That rhymed. That sounded kind of nice, right? What are the tools, not the rules? You got to learn the rules, of course, but with expression, you can break those rules too. And in fact, sometimes there is definitely more than one right answer. So it's hard to talk about rules with expression. And I just would encourage you to get out of that mindset, Elta. I would encourage you to, in fact, experiment on your own. Try accenting 1 and 3, and then try doing it differently. Try accenting 2 and 4. And then you could even try accenting other notes if you want to try a more advanced challenge. I'm going to try to accent this note. You can get into some syncopated accents and things like that. But really, my point is, you can experiment and do what sounds good to you, Elta. That's actually where I want to leave things for tonight, because this is all about what sounds good to you. Now, hopefully I'm helping you figure out the tools to get your sound to sound how you want it to sound. But at the end of the day, it's all about what you're wanting for the piece. You could play it like this if you want. Or you could play it like this. Now, I may not encourage you to be so drastic, but my only point is, it's up to you. What do you guys want to hear out of your instrument? I'm so excited to be right on the cusp of giving you guys this next section. I'm so proud of everybody for sticking with it as long as you have already. And as a reminder, for those of you who haven't started it yet, or maybe are not a Playground Session subscriber just yet, I want to encourage everyone to sign up for the app. You can always take advantage of the 30-day free trial that we offer to people who come through YouTube. And I might ask Andrew here to post that link again in the chat here. It's playgroundsessions.com/YouTube-free-trial. You can try the app for free for 30 days. And during that time, if you sign up this week, you'll be able to jump in to the Prelude in C challenge as well as part of your trial. And if you are liking what you're experiencing in the interactive app, then you can renew for the following month. So I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. We'll see where we're at. Hopefully then we'll be able to talk about Section 2 next Wednesday for our next live lesson. Same time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everyone.